The space station called Meridian 7 floated in the darkness between three star systems. It was a massive thing made of metal and glass and lights that never turned off. Over 2 million beings lived there. They came from 47 different planets. They came to trade, to work, to find new lives far from their home worlds. Among all these strange creatures walked the humans. Humans were new to space. They had only been traveling between stars for about 300 years. To the older species, this was nothing. Some races had been exploring the galaxy for 10,000 years or more. They looked at humans the way an old man might look at a baby learning to walk. But there was something different about humans. Something that made the other species nervous. Humans came from Earth, and Earth was what the galaxy called a death world. Yuna knew this. She thought about it every day as she walked through the crowded halls of Level 14. She was 28 years old. With black hair she kept tied back and eyes that missed nothing. She worked as a cargo inspector, checking the goods that came through the station. It was boring work, but it paid well, and it kept her far from the troubles of Earth. She had grown up on a mining colony, where the gravity was 1.5 times stronger than Earth normal. Her bones had grown dense and heavy. Her muscles had become compact and powerful. She did not look strong. She was shorter than most humans, and much shorter than the aliens around her. But she could lift things that would break the arms of a Velith or crush the spine of a Tarathi. She never showed this strength. She had learned long ago that showing what you could do only made others afraid. And afraid people did stupid things. Her work partner was a man named Taiho. He was 42, with gray appearing in his short hair and scars on his forearms that he never explained. Yuna knew he had been a military engineer before coming to the station. She knew he had seen combat. She knew he had killed. But she never asked about it, and he never offered to tell. They worked well together. They understood each other without needing many words. On this particular morning, they stood at Scanning Bay 7, checking cargo containers from a Velith trading ship. The Velith were a crystalline species. Their bodies were made of something like living glass, beautiful and colorful and completely fragile. They came from a paradise world with low gravity and gentle weather. Nothing on their planet had ever tried to eat them. Nothing had ever made them run or fight or struggle to survive. They thought very highly of themselves because of this. The Velith delegation came through the bay like they owned it. There were 12 of them, tall and shimmering, their bodies catching the light and throwing rainbows on the walls. Their leader was a being called Magistrate Orvith. He was colored deep blue, which meant he was old and important among his kind. He looked at Yuna and Taiho like they were insects. "These are the Deathworlders?" Orvith said to one of his assistants. He did not lower his voice. He wanted the humans to hear. "I was told there would be none of them in the commerce sector." "They are cargo inspectors, Magistrate," the assistant said nervously. "The station requires their presence for all incoming shipments." Disgusting. Orvid's voice was like breaking glass. Animals should not be permitted in civilized spaces. They carry violence in their very blood. Look at them. Look at their eyes. They are predators wearing the masks of people. Yuna continued scanning a cargo container. Her face showed nothing. Beside her, Taiho's jaw tightened, but he also said nothing. This was not new. They had heard such words before. Every human in the galaxy had heard such words. The older species feared humans, and fear made them cruel. Earth was a planet of extremes. The temperature could swing from burning hot to freezing cold within a single day. The gravity was crushing compared to most inhabited worlds. The atmosphere was filled with oxygen, a gas so reactive that it was essentially poison to half the species in the galaxy. And the planet itself was covered with predators. Parasites, diseases, natural disasters, and 1,000 other things that wanted to kill anything that lived there. Humans had survived all of it. For millions of years, human ancestors had run from predators, fought other tribes, starved through winters, burned in summers, and died in countless horrible ways. Only the strongest and smartest and most brutal had lived long enough to have children. And those children had been stronger and smarter and more brutal still. Every human alive was the result of this process. Every human carried in their genes the memory of 1,000,000 years of death and survival. The galaxy knew this. They had studied humans. They had read the reports and watched the videos and run the simulations. They knew what a human could do if pushed too far. But knowing something and understanding it are different things. Magistrate Orvith walked past Yuna, close enough that his crystalline robes brushed her arm. He did it on purpose. He wanted to show that he was not afraid of her. He wanted to show his dominance. Yuna looked up at him, just for a moment. Their eyes met. Orvith saw something there that made him look away quickly. He hurried past, pretending he had somewhere important to be. Taiho waited until the Velith were gone before he spoke. One day, someone is going to teach them a lesson. Yuna returned to her work. I hope I am there to see it. She did not know that the lesson would come much sooner than she expected, and it would change everything. 3 days after the Velith delegation arrived, the incident happened. It was evening by station time. The lights on Meridian 7 had dimmed to simulate night, though of course there was no real night in space. The common dining hall on level 9 was busy with workers finishing their shifts and visitors looking for food. Dalhan sat alone at a small table in the corner. He was 23 years old, thin for a human, with round glasses and messy black hair that fell into his eyes. He worked as a translator for the station, helping different species understand each other. He spoke 14 languages fluently and could read another 20. His brain was his greatest tool, not his body. He had never been in a fight in his life. He had never even raised his voice in anger. When other children had bullied him in school, he had simply walked away. When drunk men had tried to start trouble in bars, he had apologized and left. He believed that violence solved nothing. Tonight, he was reading linguistic files on his datapad, studying the grammar of a species he would be working with next week. He was so focused on his work that he did not notice the 3 Velith approaching until they were standing over him. They were young, teenagers by their species standards. Their crystalline bodies were bright pink and orange, colors that showed they had not yet reached full maturity. They had the look of rich children who had never been told no. Their leader was a rose-colored male with sharp edges on his face. He looked down at Dalhon with disgust. "What is this?" he said loudly, making sure everyone nearby could hear. "They let animals eat in the same hall as civilized beings?" Dawn looked up slowly. His heart beat faster, but his face remained calm. He had dealt with this kind of thing before. He knew the best response was no response. "I am just having dinner," he said quietly. "I do not want any trouble. It speaks." The Rose Velith laughed. His friends laughed with him. "The animal knows words." "How fascinating. Did someone train you? Do you do tricks?" Dohan started to gather his things. He would leave. He would find somewhere else to eat. It was not worth the trouble, but the Velith was not finished. A crystalline hand knocked the datapad from Dohan's grip. It clattered to the floor. Dohan reached down to pick it up, but the Velith stepped on it. There was a cracking sound as the screen shattered. "Oops," the Velith said, smiling. "The animal's toy is broken." The dining hall had grown quiet. Everyone was watching now. Beings from a dozen different species sat frozen at their tables, eyes fixed on the scene. They knew something bad was about to happen. They could feel it in the air. Duhan stood up slowly. He was shorter than the Velith by almost a foot. He looked small and weak and completely harmless. "That datapad cost me 3 months of pay," he said. His voice was still calm. "You will pay for a new one." The Veleth's smile disappeared. No one spoke to him that way. He was the son of a high official back home. He had grown up being told he was better than everyone else. The idea that this animal, this thing from a death world, would dare make demands of him was unthinkable. "What did you say to me?" The Veleth stepped closer. "Do you know who I am? Do you know what I could do to you?" "I know exactly what you are," Dahan said. "You are a child who had never been told no, and you just destroyed my property. You will pay for it." The first punch came without warning. The Veleth's crystalline fist swung in a wide arc and struck Dahan across the face. Among the Veleth, this was a dominance display. A punch to the face was meant to humiliate, to show who was stronger, to make the other person fall and submit. Veleth punches had ended conflicts for thousands of years on their home world. One punch was usually enough. Dahan's head turned slightly to the side. A thin line of blood appeared on his lip where a sharp crystal edge had cut him, but he did not fall. He did not stumble. He did not even step back. He stood exactly where he was, looking at the Veleth with an expression that had not changed at all. The dining hall was completely silent now. No one moved. No one breathed, because everyone understood what had just happened. A Veleth had thrown his strongest punch at a human, and the human had taken it like it was nothing, like it was a gentle breeze, like it was a child's slap. The Rose Veleth stared at his own fist, then at the human who should be lying on the ground crying. His confidence cracked like glass. Dahan reached up and wiped the blood from his lip. He looked at the red on his fingers for a long moment. Then he looked back at the Veleth. Something changed in his eyes. Something old and dark and patient. Something that had been sleeping for millions of years woke up. "You should not have done that," he said softly. The Veleth tried to step back, but it was already too late. The Deathworlder had been struck. And now the Deathworlder would respond. What happened next lasted exactly 4 seconds. Security cameras recorded everything. The footage would later be watched by millions of beings across hundreds of worlds. It would be studied by military experts and politicians and scientists. It would be shown in schools as a lesson about why you should never start a fight with a human dot in those 4 seconds. The galaxy learned something it would never forget. Dahan moved Dot to human eyes. It would look fast but possible. A quick grab, a twist, a strike. Nothing special. Just a man defending himself Dot to everyone else in that dining hall. It looked like something from a nightmare. Dahan's hand shot forward and grabbed the Rose Veleth's wrist. The Veleth tried to pull away, but he might as well have been trying to pull his arm free from a machine. Dahan's grip was like iron. The Veleth's crystalline body was beautiful, but it was also fragile. His species had evolved on a world where nothing hunted them. They had never needed strong bones or thick skin. They had never needed to be tough. Humans had needed all of these things. For millions of years, human ancestors had wrestled with predators, climbed trees, thrown spears, and fought each other with bare hands. Every part of a human body was built for violence, even if most humans never used it. Dahan squeezed Dot. The Veleth screamed as cracks spread through his forearm, like spiderwebs through glass. The sound was horrible, a high-pitched shriek mixed with the tinkling of breaking crystal. His friends watched in frozen horror. The second Veleth unfroze and lunged at Dahan. Maybe he thought he could save his friend. Maybe he was just acting on instinct. It did not matter. Dahan released the first Veleth, who crumpled to the ground holding his ruined arm. In the same motion, Dahan stepped to the side. The second Veleth stumbled past him. Off balance, Dahan drove his elbow backward. The strike hit the second Veleth in the midsection. It was not even a hard hit by human standards. Dahan was not a fighter. He had never trained in martial arts. He was just a translator who read books and studied languages, but he was still human. The Veleth's chest shattered. Pieces of crystal flew in all directions. The alien collapsed, gasping for air through a punctured breathing membrane. He would live, but he would carry scars for the rest of his life. The third Veleth ran. Duhan let him go. 4 seconds. That was all it took. 2 Veleth lay on the floor, broken and crying. The third was fleeing for his life. And Dohan stood in the middle of it all, breathing a little harder than usual, blood still on his lip. He looked around the dining hall. Every alien there had pressed themselves against the walls. They were trying to get as far from him as possible. Their eyes were wide with terror. Some of them were shaking. A few had wet themselves. They looked at Dohan like he was a monster. And in that moment, Dohan understood something important. They were not afraid of him because he had hurt those Veleth. They were afraid because he had done it so easily. Because he had not even tried very hard. Because he was just a translator, a bookworm, one of the weakest humans on the station. And he had destroyed 2 Veleth like they were made of paper. If he could do that, what could a real human warrior do? Dohan picked up the pieces of his broken datapad. He sat back down at his table. His hands were shaking now as the adrenaline began to fade. He felt sick to his stomach. He had never wanted to hurt anyone. He had spent his whole life avoiding violence. And now he had just shattered 2 beings with his bare hands. But he had not started it. He had tried to leave. He had tried to be calm. They had attacked him first. Station security arrived 8 minutes later. They came in force, 12 armed officers in heavy armor, weapons drawn. They had received reports of a massacre in progress. They expected to find bodies. Instead, they found Don sitting quietly, 2 injured Veleth on the floor, and a dining hall full of traumatized witnesses. The lead officer was a Tarathi, a tall lizard-like being with scales the color of rust. He looked at the scene, then at Dawn, then back at the scene. "You did this?" he asked. "I defended myself," Doan said. His voice was tired. "They attacked me first. There are cameras. The footage will show everything." The officer checked with Station Central. Yes, there was footage. Yes, it showed exactly what Dohan said. A Veleth had thrown the first punch. The human had responded. "You are going to need to come with us," the officer said, "for your own protection. The Veleth are not going to be happy about this." Doan nodded. He had expected this. He stood up and held out his wrists for restraints. The officer hesitated. He looked at those human hands, those small hands that had just broken 2 Veleth like toys. He decided not to use restraints. "Just follow us," he said as they walked out of the dining hall. Dohan heard whispers behind him. Words in a dozen languages, all saying the same things. Deathworlder, monster, human. He kept walking. He did not look back. The galaxy had learned its lesson. But the real consequences were only beginning. The Veleth Consortium wanted blood. Within hours of the incident, messages were flying across the galaxy. Veleth diplomats on 100 worlds were screaming for justice. News channels carried the story with dramatic headlines. Social feeds exploded with opinions and arguments and calls for action. Most of the galaxy had never seen a human fight before. Now they were seeing it on every screen, from every angle, slowed down and analyzed frame by frame. Dohan sat in a small holding cell on level 3, watching the chaos unfold on a wall-mounted screen. He felt hollow inside. He had not eaten since the fight. He had not slept. The footage played again. He watched himself break the Veleth's arm. He watched himself shatter the other one's chest. He watched his own face as he did it. He did not recognize himself. On the screen, a Veleth official was giving a speech to the Galactic Council. His name was Magistrate Orvith, the same one who had insulted Yuna in the cargo bay. His crystalline face was twisted with rage. This was not self-defense, Orvith declared. This was an unprovoked massacre by a savage creature from a savage world. The human did not just defend himself. He destroyed 2 young Velith with brutal, excessive force. He could have restrained himself. He chose violence instead. The council chamber murmured. Representatives from dozens of species whispered to each other. We demand justice, Orvith continued. We demand the human be executed for his crimes. We demand all humans be removed from civilized stations. We demand reparations for the families of the victims. And we demand that the Galactic Council acknowledge what we have always known. Humans are too dangerous to be allowed among us. Dohan turned off the screen. He could not watch anymore. The door to his cell opened. A human woman walked in. She was older, perhaps in her late 50s, with silver hair cut short and eyes that looked like they had seen everything. She wore a simple uniform with no decoration except a single badge on her chest. Captain G.A., representative of the Human Alliance. You are Dohan, she said. It was not a question. Yes. She sat down across from him. For a long moment, she just looked at him. Dohan felt like she was reading his entire life in his face. I have watched the footage, she said finally. 17 times. I have consulted with our legal experts, our military advisors, and our psychologists. And I have reached a conclusion. Dohan waited. You did nothing wrong. He blinked. 2 people are in the medical bay because of me. 2 people who attacked you first. 2 people who broke your property, insulted you, and then struck you in the face. Captain Jihee's voice was calm but firm. You responded to an attack. You ended the threat. You did not pursue the 3rd attacker when he fled. You did not continue striking the others after they were down. You used exactly as much force as necessary, and no more. It did not feel that way. No, it never does. She leaned forward. I have been in combat, Dohan. Real combat, with weapons and explosions and people trying to kill me. I know what it feels like to hurt someone. I know the guilt that comes after. But I also know the difference between a murderer and a defender. She put her hand on his shoulder. You are a defender. Never forget that. The trial, if it could be called that, happened 3 days later. The Galactic Council convened in their great chamber. A massive circular room with seats rising in tiers for thousands of representatives. At the center was a raised platform where the accused would stand. Dohan stood there alone. He wore simple clothes. He had refused the fancy robes the lawyers had suggested. He wanted them to see him as he was, an ordinary human, not a warrior, not a monster. Just a translator who had been in the wrong place at the wrong time. Captain G.A. stood nearby. Ready to speak on his behalf. Magistrate Orvith spoke first. He repeated his demands. He showed the footage again and again. He brought in Velith medical experts who described the injuries in horrifying detail. He called Dohan a beast, an animal, a danger to all civilized life. Then it was Captain Jihee's turn. She walked to the center of the chamber. The room fell silent. I would like to show you something, she said. Please watch carefully. The footage played one more time. But this time, it started earlier. It showed Dohan sitting alone, reading his datapad. It showed the Velith approaching. It showed them knocking his datapad away, stepping on it. Insulting him. It showed Dohan trying to leave. It showed the Velith blocking his path. It showed the punch. There, Captain Jihei said, freezing the image. Right there. That is the moment this stopped being a misunderstanding and became an assault. A Velith struck a human. He threw the first punch. Everything that happened after that was a direct consequence of that choice. She looked around the chamber. You'd call my people dangerous. You'd call us violent. You'd call us animals from a death world. And yes, we are from a difficult planet. We evolved to survive things that would kill most species in seconds. Our bodies are built for strength and endurance, and yes, for violence when necessary. Her voice grew harder. But we did not start this. We have never started a war in this galaxy. We have never thrown the first punch. We came to the stars seeking friends, not enemies. And yet, everywhere we go, we are treated like monsters. We are insulted. We are attacked. We are blamed for defending ourselves. She pointed at Magistrate Orvith. Your people threw the first punch. Not us. Your people will pay for the consequences. Not us. The vote happened the next day that the Velis demands were rejected. All of them. Unanimously. Dohan was free. 1 year passed. The galaxy changed in ways no one had expected. Meridian-7 still floated in the void between 3 star systems. The lights still never turned off. The 2 million beings still went about their lives, trading and working and finding their way through the stars. But something was different now. Everyone could feel it. Humans walked through the station with their heads held high. They no longer looked at the ground when other species passed. They no longer pretended not to hear the insults whispered behind their backs, because there were no more insults. Not anymore. Yuna noticed the change first. She was still working as a cargo inspector on level 14, though now she had a better title and better pay. Senior Inspector Yuna, they called her. She had earned it through hard work and dedication, but she knew the real reason for her promotion. The station needed humans. Everyone knew that now. After the incident, the Galactic Council had quietly begun changing their policies. Humans were no longer just tolerated in civilized spaces. They were recruited. They were wanted. Every station, every ship, every outpost needed at least a few humans on staff, not because they were violent, not because other species were afraid of what they might do, because they had proven they could be trusted. The footage had shown everything. Dohan could have killed those Velith. He had the strength. He had the opportunity. In that moment, no one could have stopped him if he had wanted to finish what he started, but he had not. He had stopped. He had let the third one run. He had sat down and waited for security. That restraint meant more than any display of force ever could. Tejo understood this better than most. He was now training the first mixed species security force on the station. Humans and aliens working together, learning from each other, protecting everyone equally. It was hard work. Many of the aliens were still nervous around humans. They flinched when a human moved too fast. They stepped back when a human got too close. Old fears did not disappear overnight, but Tejo was patient. He had been through worse. And slowly, day by day, the aliens began to relax. They began to see humans as colleagues instead of threats. They began to understand that strength did not have to mean violence. Dohan returned to his translation work. He still sat in the same corner of the same dining hall, still reading his datapad, still studying new languages. But things were different for him too. People nodded when they passed his table. They smiled. They sometimes stopped to say hello. A few had even asked him to teach them human languages, curious about the species that had shocked the galaxy. He was famous now, though he had never wanted to be. The translator who had broken 2 Velith with his bare hands. The bookworm who had shown the galaxy what a human could do. He did not like the attention. He still felt sick when he thought about that night. He still had nightmares sometimes, dreams where he was breaking things that could not be put back together. But he was also proud. He had defended himself. He had stood up for his people. And he had done it without losing who he was. Captain Ga gave her final address to the Galactic Council on the 1-year anniversary of the incident. Representatives from every species in the known galaxy were watching, either in person or through screens on distant worlds. She stood at the center of the great chamber. silver hair shining under the lights, and spoke words that would be remembered for centuries. 1 year ago, a young human was attacked in a dining hall. He defended himself, and the galaxy lost its mind. Soft laughter rippled through the chamber. Even some of the Velith representatives smiled grimly. You were afraid of us. Some of you still are. I understand why. We come from a world that would kill most of you in minutes. We carry in our bodies the history of 1,000,000 years of survival. We are, by your standards, living weapons. She paused. But we are also more than that. We are artists and poets. We are scientists and dreamers. We are parents who love our children and friends who would die for each other. We are not the monsters you feared. We never were. Her voice grew stronger. We came to the stars with open hands. We offered friendship. We offered trade. We offered the chance to learn from each other and grow together. Some of you took that offer. Some of you insulted us, attacked us, tried to destroy us. And we responded. We always responded. She looked around the chamber, meeting the eyes of every species. We have a saying on Earth. It is simple, but it contains a truth that every species should understand. She smiled. It was a small smile, warm but dangerous. Do not start none, and there will not be none. The chamber was silent. We will always offer our hand in peace. We will always try to talk before we fight. We will always give you a chance to walk away. But if you throw the first punch, if you force us to defend ourselves, if you make us choose between submission and survival, her smile faded. We will throw the last punch. Every time. Without fail. Because that is who we are. That is what Earth made us. And that is why you should be very, very careful about making us your enemy. She turned and walked out of the chamber. Behind her, the galaxy was silent. Then, slowly, applause began. It spread through the chamber like a wave, growing louder and louder until it echoed from the walls. Humans watched from their homes, their ships, their stations. They watched and they smiled, and they felt something they had not felt since leaving Earth. Pride. They were Deathworlders. They were survivors. They were human. And the galaxy would never forget it.